Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the New Year, New Me digital event hosted by CMI Wales Board. My name's Kath Austin. I'm the chair of the CMI Wales Board, and I'll shortly be handing over to Jessica Edwards and Simon Hempel to begin today's event. As you would have read from the description and teaser about today's event, this is the first in a series of 4 sessions that mixes together a bit of theory and lots of practical sessions to really help us start the year reframing in a positive way about how we live and work. I'm sure everyone on this call has experienced an emotional roller coaster during the last few years, and I hope that during the next few sessions, the next 4 weeks together, we can connect, share, and have some fun. If you've got any questions during the digital event, you can ask them using the live chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, which will answer as many as we can as in today's Q&A session. The session today is also being recorded and will be shared with you later on for those that booked to attend and couldn't attend live. The event recording will also be available on the CMI website and the CMI YouTube channel. Any questions we can't answer today, we'll also have another opportunity on our 4th session, where we're again going a little bit more theory into the world of well-being. But without much ado, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Jessica Edwards, the Light Experience Lead at Sarsen, and Simon Hempel, the founding partner and CEO of Sarsen, to begin the event and provide us a bit of an introduction to what Sarsen does and the series that we have ahead of us. So over to you both.
Thank you so much, Kath. And we're so delighted to be here, aren't we, Simon? It's a really wonderful opportunity to talk to all of you about this very urgent and crucial topic. But before we start, I wanted to begin by inviting you all to kind of drop into the space with me, and we're going to have a bit of a grounding exercise. So I'm going to ask you to find a comfortable seat. You might want to move around a little bit. And if you feel comfortable closing down the eyes, I'm going to close mine. And just start to feel your feet on the floor. Let your hands rest comfortably in your lap. And just start to tune into your breath. And you'll hear us saying this a few times over the next few sessions. But try not to judge or change the breath. Just notice where it's sitting in the body. Is it shallow or deep? Is it light or heavy? Where is it sitting for you today? And I'm just going to invite you to draw your attention through the body. We're going to start at the toes, at the feet, and we're going to scan all the way up through the body to the top of the head, just to help you land in your body after, the stresses and challenges or surprises of the day you've had, and let you be fully present together with all of us in this virtual space. So taking a nice deep breath and drawing your attention, first of all, to your toes. Don't judge or change as you did with the breath. Don't judge or change, just notice. Now take your focus from your toes to the soles of your feet. How do they feel on the floor, on the ground, on the carpet underneath you? Through the soles of the feet to the ankles, the heels, Achilles tendon, up through the calves, the shins, the knees. Don't judge or change, just notice. Now take your focus up from the knees, feeling the hands resting in the lap, through the thighs, the glutes, the pelvis, the base of the spine, the stomach, the solar plexus, the ribs. Don't judge or change, just notice. Up from the ribs, the intercostal muscles, all those spaces in between that hold you together. Chest, the wrists, the forearms. Taking your focus now to the elbows, the insides of the elbows, the biceps, the shoulders, the shoulder blades. Allow them to gently relax down the back. We hold so much of our tension in our shoulders. Drawing the focus up the spine, the sacral spine, the lumbar spine, up to the back of the neck, the collarbones, the throat. Don't judge or change, just notice. up to the jaw, the lips, the root of the tongue, the roof of the mouth, the cheeks, the surfaces of the teeth. Don't judge or change, just notice. The nose, the eyelids, the temples, the eyebrows, the forehead, the space between the eyebrows, the nape of the neck, the scalp, the top of the head. And now just bring your focus to that space just above the top of your head and allow yourself to sit in this gently, softly awakened awareness. All the different parts of your body all working together. Perhaps they're a little bit tired. It's the end of the day, nearly the end of the week. But how can you let them just be as they are today? Now taking the attention back to the breath. Just allowing that breath to get a little bit deeper. Taking it out of the usual, more shallow space, just letting it travel up and down the spine. As you inhale, imagining the breath flowing down the spine. And as you exhale, imagining the breath flowing back up the spine, out of the mouth or the nose. And now allowing that breath to run all the way down the spine, right down into the belly. Just taking that breath a little deeper than you might usually. And letting that energy relax you, let you drop into the space, into your body, into this gentle space of awareness. We'll take one breath in and out all together. So breathing in and out. And then when you're ready, softly blinking open the eyes, coming back to a little more awareness of the space that you're in. Maybe take a moment to look around the room you're in and coming back to be with us on the screen. Wonderful. I hope that's grounded everybody a little bit in the space and let you into a little bit more presence so that we can all tune in here together. I'm now going to hand over to Natasha to give us a little video of what Sarsen does before Simon elucidates a bit further. So over to you, Natasha.
Modern life is moving at an unprecedented pace. It's hectic and stressful, and people are struggling to thrive. We hear it all the time, all around us. The smallest thing can overwhelm me. I can't get out of my head. I feel lost, like I'm just drifting through life. I know there's something more to all of this, and I really want to discover it. Does any of this sound familiar? Introducing Light, a new operating system for personal growth, positive mental health and well-being. Delivered via an online platform through an app and live events, Light brings together a broad range of daily practices, experiences and content to support you on your journey. Light is designed for everyone, not just the mindfulness converts or meditation masters, although it is for them too. It's also for the builder, the banker, the ballerina, and everyone in between. We speak to the things that connect us, to the familiar, the relatable, the shared experience of simply being human. So when the whole world is asking you to play, Light invites you simply to pause, to reassess and reconnect, to deepen your relationships, to expand your capacity to handle whatever life throws at you. Above all, it holds a safe space for you to explore and track your progress on this path of self-discovery. What begins as a pause becomes a doorway to a place where you can find growth and freedom wherever and whenever you need it. Welcome to Light.
Thanks, Natasha. So why Sarsen and the consciousness gap, which is an area that we're very deeply thinking about here within our organisation. I don't know whether anyone's read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, but in there he has a lovely phrase, in between stimulus and response there lies a gap, and in that gap is our growth and our freedom. And I think what we're trying to do is create a gap for everyone, from this very busy life, this hectic schedule we seem to all be on, the relentlessness of it, and the gap that opens up allows us to sort of notice things differently. There was a book written by Thomas Friedman called Thank You for Being Late. Rather amazing if you haven't read it, and interesting at least for me. And in there, he talks about the exponential change that we're going through in this generation. That up until between about 1750 and 1950, we had like one exponential hockey stick of change in each generation. And suddenly we've got 40 or 50 happening at the same time. Things like nanotechnology and biotechnology, and then also things like population growth and water loss and soil erosion, all these hockey sticks of change. But if we look at the human growth, it's not a hockey stick of change. It's a sort of meandering line that just about goes up left to right. And we've got this big gap that's opening up between our cleverness of change and the wisdom of how we deal with it. And if we think about, Einstein spoke, the challenge of humanity is to try and meet the problems of today with not the same way of thinking that created them. So how do we bridge this gap between cleverness and wisdom? How do we create a space for ourselves to grow as human beings? I had a rather amazing conversation once with a mystic, and he said to me, Simon, complexity is simplicity in the right size vessel. The challenge we have today is to try and expand our vessel. And for me, that's what this is all about. And what Sarsen's here to try and do is to expand our vessel as human beings so we can cope with the challenges that are placed in front of us and to make different choices and to find a different way of engaging in life and the actions that come from that. There was a lovely Zen master I spent some time with once, and he said for him, I think the phrase he used was the pre-awareness of choice into action. How can we all become aware that we can become aware? Rather interesting concept. I wonder if we are aware that we can become aware, because in the becoming awareness of awareness, so we notice different choices. And with those different choices, we act in a different way. And what we're doing at Sarsen, you saw a little bit out on the clip now, and we'll talk more in a minute with Kath and later in this conversation, is we're trying to bring a series of practices, of experiences that will help us create that gap, that will help us notice something different within ourselves. And in that noticing, maybe one of those, we say, wow, that makes me feel a bit more connected, a bit closer to who I am, maybe to my friends and family, my colleagues around me, maybe more to my purpose and what I'm doing in the world. So I want to practice that a little bit. I want to do that regularly, because what we've also noticed is if each of us find a way of doing something regularly, we change habits and behaviors. And a leopard can change his spots. I don't think we knew that. I think actually until about 20, 30 years ago, we all thought, that's it, that's who I am, that's how I'm going to show up for the rest of my life. But actually that's not true. We all have the capacity to grow and to expand and to take on life in a different way. And really, that's what we're trying to do in the course of our journey with Sarsen. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass over to Kath, I think, now, and we're going to have a little conversation, the three of us.
Thanks very much, Simon and Jess. That was a really great start. It's brilliant to jump on in there with the practice, and I already feel a bit more chilled than I did 10 minutes ago, so thank you. I think, a lot of people watching this today, and sort of myself, be working in corporate life, and they'll be literally in the hustle and bustle. They may be in that phase of having to go back into the daily commute, going back into the office, jumping back into things again, maybe the old ways of working that we put down a couple of years ago. And lots of people I know and talk to, they're all kind of in that space where they're thinking, is this who I am now? And is this what I want? And where is life going to take me? Now, starting with you, Simon, you obviously had a complete revelation at some point way before COVID that got you to where you are today. And again, we know there's a little teaser on the intro bio, but you've had an incredibly fascinating life. So we've only got about 15 minutes, and I want to try and cover both of your lives in that time, which is not going to do it justice, but just wanted to really understand those sort of change points. So what kind of, where did you start? So did you start on a corporate life, or where did the world of work start for you?
Yeah. It started, I was very lucky, Kath. And by the way, I think we're all work in progress the whole time. So there you are. in my early 20s, I founded my first business as an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what entrepreneurs were. I just had an idea and it went well. And for the next 8 years, everything I touched turned to gold. Amazing, really. And I had 4 companies. I had a brokerage company, and I had a sports marketing and events business, and I had a management consultancy and a tech business. And I had offices in London, New York, Monaco, Sydney. It was just Vancouver. And then I lost everything I had when I was in my early 30s. And I had a lot then, and that was really hard. And it didn't feel fair, and I felt full of shame and guilt, and I couldn't work out why, because I was so used to always succeeding and always turning left on aeroplanes and having a strange life, really, looking back on it. And I had to take stock, and I ended up going to Seville in southern Spain. I wanted to go somewhere to recover from all this emotion and the loss, both material and I think just personal emotion, everything. And I earned in a year what I used to pay myself in a week, and yet I had the most amazing year. And that was like, oh, that's interesting. How can that be? I was always so caught by the material side, and suddenly I had this experience of living in an amazing city. I learned a language, I worked on tables, I taught English, I did whatever I could to survive. So I had a very different life to what I'd had the previous 8 years. And you know what? I ended up having to fall into trust, Kath. I never had a relationship with trust before, but at that stage I had nothing else. So I had to start trusting life to open up in front of me and just follow it. And that took me out to a trip. I had all these air miles. When you lose businesses, you don't lose air miles, amazingly. And so I found myself traveling through Central and South America for a year on a hot air. I had no money, but one brother gave me a rucksack and my sister gave me a tent and my other brother gave me a sleeping bag. And I crisscrossed Central and South America on my air miles and just found work wherever I could.
What did they think about this? Because obviously for the family looking at you, were they advising you to go back into normal life, or were they, how did they respond to this big change in your life?
I think after many years of quite scratching their head about my life, they were like, oh, well, okay, you've always done things unusually, you're going to do it again. I think they were also just pleased, so they knew how affected I'd been by everything going wrong. And I think they saw me getting my spirit back and my sense of adventure. And, I said to them, I'd never lived remotely. I've always lived in big cities. Wouldn't it be amazing to go and live in other parts of the world, in other communities? And in doing that, I got confidence back. I really did. I found myself again. And from that, I ended up completely by accident. I met an explorer in a bar in La Paz in Bolivia who happened to be going down the Amazon the next day, and he invited me to join him. And I said yes. And I ended up co-running that expedition and then working for a British charity leading expeditions over the Himalayas, down the Amazon again, across Mongolia in the Gobi Desert, down the Blue Nile from Ethiopia to Sudan, doing sort of aid work, building wells and schools, and really just engaging with the scientific community, learning as we went along all these incredible journeys. And that gave me sort of sense of, wow, life is very different when you get outside London or New York. I was there for extended periods of time. And then I got invited to run an international NGO. The organization was called Right to Sight, and it tackles needless blindness. And the funders of my previous businesses, the venture capital and private equity businesses, I was asked to come back and do a talk around leadership for one of them. And they said, look, Simon, we know this NGO. They're looking for a leader who's commercial, but has lived remotely. And we think, you've got those experiences now. Why don't you take this on as a new challenge? So I ended up becoming chief exec of Right to Sight, and I went and lived in southern India in the hospitals there to learn about my trade, and then take it across Africa and other parts of India and Southeast Asia and help those who are needlessly blind see again. And that was an amazing experience of purpose. I'd never had that purpose before, and really found a way of translating my commercial skills into contribution, really. And as I left there, Kath, after 5 years, I've been walkabout for nearly 10 years. I've got to get home. I haven't seen my friends and family. Everyone's got married. I'm 53 now. That was about 10 years ago. And I've got to try and settle down. And on the way back, I resigned from Right to Sight. On the way back, the Indian doctors and nurses told me about a man on a hill, 5 hours drive by bus away from this hospital I was staying in southern India. They said, we think you should go and meet. And he was a Zen master Jesuit monk, a man called Amasami, still with us now, amazing man. And I went there for a day and spent 2 months. And in the end, I did 8 hours of meditation a day, of which a month was in silence. So it was an extraordinary moment. So if you ask me about moments, that was a big moment. I come from losing businesses. I come from a sense of going back into finding myself and purpose and contribution. I sort of dropped away from the material side of life, and suddenly I was with this man who was really challenging me to look within. And I think that's where a lot of what's happened for my last 10 years of life has come from that 2 months with Amasumi. And I built a practice in meditation, which I've never lost. So I've been lucky to have that. I've now got 2 little girls and another one on the way. We're not quite sure whether it's a boy or a girl. And that's quite hard, but fun to have those kids around me as I sit every morning. But I find it's an anchor. So when I talked about practice now, it's an anchor for me to tune into the day. And it's a way of resetting. So if the day gets in my way or I get caught by the drama of it, I know that the next morning I can come back to myself. So I'm never going to be worse off than 24 hours. And often I then bring it into my day. So I could tell you a lot more, but there's a bit of the journey for you.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because again, probably not all of us have had such a dramatic story in terms of, you know, such a big thing go wrong in our lives. But you find there's kind of incremental fatigue that sets in, isn't there? Then there's incremental things that happen in life that we all have to face. And, you know, we all get to that stage where we have to face grief or we have to face something very, very challenging and difficult. And it's kind of, how do you find those anchors, as you say, to help you without the kind of the big change or the big transformation?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And you know, of course, I've described some dramatic change, but in between that, plenty of those little moments that we all get caught by. I think for me, what I've noticed is my ability to become more present in the last 10 years. And when we're present, not to be quite so caught by the drama that plays out in front of it. It's not that life won't have a different series of experiences. So I think the up and down life is just the same for everyone. You don't just end up having a happy life. I don't believe in that. But I think how we engage with it and how we internally hold ourselves within it, you can absolutely be in control of. And once we begin to practice that and become aware of it, like this pre-awareness of awareness and choice into action, actually, it's amazing how life opens up differently. So that's what I've really noticed in my own journey, Kath.
Yeah. And sort of coming back from living overseas in remote places, very, very different places to say London or, you know, the UK, how did you re-assimilate back into a more normal life, I suppose?
Well, I had quite a lucky bridge. I became the managing partner of an organization called Leaders Quest, who take senior leaders away on experiential journeys to challenge the existing mindset. And so I was off in, you know, other parts of the world, often with these senior leaders, using the content of where I was as a conversation about why we do what we do and what's happening. So I had that bridge of reliving in London, but also being able to go back into communities that I now had met and all over the world. And that was a lovely bridge until such time as I thought, I now need to be a bit more rooted. And that's when I met my lovely wife and the kids started to come. So that's certainly kept me a bit more rooted than before.
When you look into business now, because obviously you're developing Sarsen Up, you're connecting and networking, connecting with lots of different businesses and types. Do you see common things? Are you starting to see themes emerge when you talk to people who are working in corporate environments?
Yeah, I mean, there's a common theme of overwhelm. There's a common theme of burnt outness. There's a common theme of the relentlessness. There's a common theme of people trying to connect to purpose, actually, of their own and what's needed for the business and how to bring that into the world in a different way. I think there's a sense of a yearning for as an inner yearning. I keep feeling that with people of wanting something without quite knowing what it is. I think there's a sense of community, actually. How can we help build community that really supports us? And I think there's also often a sense of being in organizations which are still driven by fear sometimes or hierarchy and struggling to make sense of that and to find a way through it. Because often you find that people say one thing and do another, and that's very difficult to actually engage with.
It is. And it's like, I think, again, I mean, I'm sure many people on this call will have experienced it. It's always that balance, isn't it, in a corporate environment of wanting to do good things and not be seen as virtue signaling or, you know, sort of doing things for the right reasons and not just because they look good on a website or they sound nice and all those sorts of things. And so your bit about finding purpose, it's kind of the challenge for leaders and organizations is to find the authentic thing, isn't it, that really does work with that business to make it better. And that for different businesses, won't it? So,
and I think it's around, I think, how we feel enough as a human being. And I've noticed when people seem to feel a bit of enough, we're never enough, but a bit of enough, then we have the confidence to speak our truth and be in integrity. And so we can hold the line and we can challenge things, but we can also channel what really is needed into the situation. So we can become more creative. But if we're coming from a place of feeling lack, often we make poor choices, and that can reverberate consequentially out into the system.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to move to Jess now, if that's okay. So obviously, Jess, you and Simon found each other through Sarsen, and you've got very different backgrounds. Jess, equally fascinating as to what brought you here today. Where did you start? Where did life start for you?
Well, so my background, Kath, is in theatre. So have been a theatre director for the last 10 years, theatre director and writer. But my work is even a little unusual in the theatre sector. I work with artists and writers who want to work with autobiography. So of necessity, my directing style has quite a lot in common with some therapeutic techniques, because I have often ended up also working with trauma as well. And so I became kind of very interested in therapeutic practices and consciousness practices and how I might include those. Oh, I think we might have lost Kath. Hopefully she'll be back with us in a second. Anyway, so how I might include those in my rehearsal rooms. And I'm so struck listening to your story, Simon, some of it familiar and some of it new. But for me, hey, Kath, I think we lost you there for a second. I think for me, the real magic in a rehearsal room is when someone can feel safe and held in vulnerability and safe to go into those places of introspection that can be very scary and vulnerable. And I feel like the modern world has so few opportunities for us to do that. And I think that's what we're trying to create with Sarsen, is that opportunity for vulnerability and safety and connection, meaningful connection. So I feel so excited to bring something of my experience, my sort of esoteric experience in the theatre, in this very specific corner of the theatre, into a much more accessible world. So hopefully that gives you a little flavour.
Brilliant. Well, I'm just getting interested how you started out. So how did you actually make that first step into theatre? What sort of took you there versus stepping into a normal career path, I suppose?
Well, so I'm one of those people who I always knew that I wanted to do something to do with storytelling. And I love being in rooms with people and storytelling that can be connecting and live. And I think that theatre is such a vessel for connection. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor because I didn't know that directors existed. And I realised that it wasn't a great move to be a not brilliant actor who would just speak more quickly to the other actors on stage to try and get them to speak more quickly. And then somebody explained to me that a director existed, and I went, hang on, I really like doing that. I like helping people get the best out of themselves. That's basically for me what a director is. And I'm very interested in conceiving artistic worlds and kind of shaping experiences, which is a lot actually what I'm doing with Light and with Sarsen now, which is kind of very exciting. But I went to I did English at Oxford, and I was lucky enough to be in a place where there's amazing student theatre. And then after that, I kind of just kept going. I feel like I've been very lucky to have the opportunity to do all of that. However, at the same time, it is very difficult to earn a living as a theatre director in this country. And so I always kind of complemented my work with work in the kind of corporate world, primarily as a facilitator. And I had been doing that for about 8 years before I met Simon and Sarsen. And the first conversation we had, I just went, wow, this is working with Sarsen is an opportunity for me to bring everything I'm interested in, combining the kind of challenges that people experience in the corporate world with a lot of the more energetic therapeutic work that I do in my theatre world, and bringing them to bear together, which was something I'd never had the opportunity to do before. So it feels like an incredibly holistic relationship that I have with Sarsen, which is hugely satisfying.
Great. I've got a bit of a big question for both of you, actually, because it's one I'm always wrangling with. Obviously, again, sort of in the world of business, there's that pressure for growth, isn't there? Grow, profit, shareholder return, all those things. In the context of the worlds that we're operating within, with finite resources and all the challenges that we know about, how as business, how do we reshape that? How do we redefine what growth is, if you like, from what you're seeing? Is there a different way for business that you see?
That's a lovely big question.
Sorry, it's a
Juicy one.
massive question, but it's just,
Well,
again, it's,
I would say there is a role for business. I would definitely start with that. There's a role for business. I think you're right. I mean, I think doing things without recognizing the consequence of actions is what's created the problem today. So for me, in the recognition and taking ownership of those consequences, I think we can still try and live with an abundant mindset. I don't think a scarcity mindset serves any of us in life, but I also recognize that we can't keep doing things the same way. So I think business has to be much more proactive in its appreciation of what's needed. But I also recognize, if you think about all the businesses that are becoming more purposeful, and the people who get behind those, and the connection that people make with them because of that sense of purpose and because of that sense of quality and care. And I think it's, to an earlier point you made, Kath, if people are doing this just as a sort of greenwash then it's not going to work. But if it's really thoughtful, I don't see why we can't still live an abundant life, because we are having, I mean, we saw today or yesterday on the news here in the UK, nuclear fusion made a big step forward. There are some other things happening that will bring, in 50 years' time, maybe very cheap, abundant energy. When you've got that, you can do a lot more things with it. So there are lots of opportunities ahead of us that aren't going to shut us down, but we have to be much more conscious of why we're doing things the way we are in business, I think.
Also, I hope that we might start to find alternative metrics for growth that are more qualitative. And I think that is really, really starting to happen. I'm certainly hearing about that in how you create an environment for people to grow in other ways. And I think that is really exciting. And I think it's been really forced to return to something that you said to Simon earlier, Kat, about the sort of sustenance of a big change or a big trauma. And of course, we've all just been through that in the last 2 years. And I think that challenge and paradigm shift, I hope, is what we're all going to need to make some really exciting changes going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense that everyone's looking for human connections, aren't they? Be it in the world of work, outside of work. Everyone kind of wants meaning and people they can trust fundamentally, which again, you were talking about trust earlier. And sort of from the Charter Management Institute perspective, we're always looking at what does leadership mean? What does management mean? And, if you're leading a team of people and managing those people, 10 years ago, it was all about task. It was literally, how do you set objectives? And now it's how do you almost emotionally manage your team? How do you keep them happy, isn't it? It's the happiness quadrant, really. So, yeah, it's a big shift, isn't it, for managers?
Yeah. How do you build healthy cultures? How do you build a culture of openness and decent behaviour to each other? Those things are so important.
Indeed. So I think now, again, it's sort of thinking about how we interject big questions with small practical things that can help us. We're going to move into the next session, which is going to be a bit of practical work around an introduction to breathwork, I believe.
Yeah, I'll just speak to that quickly, Kath. So this is Richie Bostock, one of our wonderful community and part of our council. And we thought it'd be fun for everyone just to get a little experience, a little taster of what we give our customers, our clients, our friends, our community. So there's 2 videos. One, for roughly 5 minutes, as Richie speaks to who he is and why he does what he does, and the importance, the context of that around breathwork. And then a second, which is a little vignette and little window into breathwork itself, which I encourage everyone just to sit quietly and do. It's over 5 minutes, then we can come back and talk further. Maybe Natasha, you can get the videos running now, please.
Think about the last time that you took a really deep breath. And how did that make you feel? We breathe somewhere between 19 to 27,000 times per day. And if you did anything else that many times per day, you'd probably have a pretty good idea of how you do it and why you do it. But for most of us, we just go along in our daily lives taking our breath for granted, just assuming it's something that just happens without us having to think about it. And yet we don't realize that here we have a profound tool that we can use to massively enhance our life. I actually came to this work because I was trying to help my dad. He was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and there's no magic pill that you can take and it just disappears. It's often something that people have to deal with for a lifetime. And so I was looking for ways to be able to help him, whether it was alternative diets, alternative therapies, and it was through my research that I came across a man by the name of Wim Hof, also known as the Iceman. I ended up traveling to Poland and spending a week in this little village in the middle of winter, learning all about the Wim Hof method. We would spend every day in the snow, in our pants, barefoot, hiking around, learning how to deal with the cold just by regulating our breathing. And we would also do these amazing breathing routines and have absolutely incredible experiences just by breathing in certain ways. I shared my experiences with my dad. He started to incorporate breathing techniques every day, and from that moment onwards, the progression of his MS completely stopped in its tracks. And so that was really the catalyst for me to wonder, well, what else is possible with breathing? And so I started to do a little research and found that actually there are all sorts of people all over the world doing different things with the breath to create different benefits. So I started to travel, and it took me about 3.5 years to go all over and find all sorts of different experts, whether they were therapists, counselors, physiotherapists, academic researchers, yogis, all sorts of different people who use the breath or focus on using the breath in different ways. I think we all understand and accept that our breathing affects us. And it's even built into our language. Perhaps you have a friend who is stressed out or panicking, and the first thing you say to them is, "It's okay, take a deep breath." How we breathe is a direct reflection of how we are feeling. Our breath is so intimately linked with our nervous system that it can't help but start to change and reflect what's going on inside of us. But what's so amazing about it is that it works two ways. So we can purposefully use the breath to affect our nervous system along with everything else that happens inside of us to create better health, to help us to perform better, to feel more relaxed, to sleep better. Really, the possibilities are endless, and it really just starts by becoming aware of your breath. I always just encourage people to be so curious. Our thinking is really only as good as the quality of our questions. So if you can start to ask yourself the questions of what is possible for me, what is it that I can do that I didn't know that I could do, then your brain's going to start to whirl around and try and find the answers. Yeah. Oh. And breathe. And breathe. And breathe. Hello everyone. I'd love to offer for you right now a very simple breathing technique that you can use at any moment throughout the day. Now, of course, we can use the breath in very profound ways where we might lie down for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, even longer to make massive shifts in our physiology and how we think and how we feel. But we can also use the breath in very simple ways throughout the day to create quick changes in our state of being. So what I would love to offer for you right now is a super quick and simple technique that you can use at any time that you might be feeling a little stressed or overwhelmed or frustrated to bring you back into a center of groundedness, presence, and balance. Now, the general rule of thumb whenever we want to bring some more peace or calm to our nervous system is to breathe a little slower. So we're going to be breathing for a count of 5 in through the nose, a count of 5 out through the nose, rinse and repeat. It's that easy. So wherever you are right now, I invite you to close your eyes and to relax, sitting comfortably, maybe even lying down if that suits you. And for the first moment here, simply become aware of your breath. Noticing how it feels to breathe, and for each one of us it will feel a little different. Noticing where the movement is in our body as we inhale and as we exhale. And now let's start to use the breath with purpose as we breathe slowly through our nose, in and out, for 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. It's a slow breath. So really try and ration and extend out your inhales and your exhales to the best that you can. So I invite you now to exhale out. And allow me to start you off. So through the nose, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, in, 2, 3, 4, 5, out, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now continue yourself breathing at a count that feels comfortable for you. If breathing in for 5 and out for 5 feels a little too challenging, then try a 4 count. Until it feels comfortable, and then maybe try moving back up to 5. Breathing slowly, easily, and effortlessly. Really rationing out your breath for the entire inhale and the entire exhale, so that you are creating this continuous circle of breath without any pauses. And now, finishing the final breath that you are on, and then just allowing the breath to come and go naturally as it pleases. And before you open your eyes, just notice if you can feel anything different in your body. or if there has been a change. Maybe you can feel a sensation, or just notice a difference in how you're sitting. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the world of the senses. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you again very soon.
So I hope that was an interesting experience for you. You were able to join us in that practice. I wanted to offer you a moment now, all of us a moment now, to just take time to reflect on how that practice was. And Richie gave us a little opportunity to do that at the end there. But I just want to take a moment. You can either write things down. If you have a pen and paper to hand, you could write down some thoughts, or you can just sit back and tune inwards a little. Close your eyes if you like. And just notice, is there anything different about your body? Are you noticing a tingling sensation, a lightness, a heaviness? Is there any greater relaxation? Just get curious about what the practice has done to you, first of all, physically. And one of the most useful tools in the kind of wellness, mindfulness arsenal, if you like, is being really curious about your reaction to it. And that, might necessarily always be positive. It might be neutral. It might be negative. It's all fine. It's all welcome. All of those different things are welcome. So just taking some time to think through what's different for you physiologically. And either going through it in your mind or writing it down with a pen and paper. And then taking a moment to tune into what came up in your mind. When we focus on our breath, that's certainly a focus, but there are always going to be thoughts and feelings that come and go as you do the practice. Is there anything that surprised you? Anything that appeared that might be something you need to take more notice of in your life? Anything that you need to think through after the practice? Just take a moment to get curious about what's going on in your mind. So we've gone for the body. Now we're tuning into the mind. And perhaps take a moment to write something down, if you like. And then finally, get curious about what's coming up in the heart space. What did you feel in the practice? Try and be as specific as you can about this. It's great to start with, happy or sad, safe or vulnerable. But think really specifically, how did it make me feel? How did it feel at the beginning of the practice? Did that change? Was it how you expected to feel? Get really curious and really notice. And those three spaces, the physiological, the body, the thoughts in the mind, and the feelings in the heart, are a great place to start when you're starting to look inwards and track how you react to these practices. Now, in the next two sessions, we'll be looking at two other practices, new ones. As you'll have seen if you've had a look at the what we've released about them. But I encourage you to get really curious in those practices as well and see what comes up for you in those three spaces. Simon, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that was lovely, Jess. Thank you.
So I think now we're Q&A. Over to you.
Yeah, just a little bit on that. Again, I think things like the breathwork practice, they're really easy things you can integrate again into work, can't you? So it doesn't have to take an hour. It's literally a couple of minutes. And even if you're at desk at home or in the office, you can find that space just to breathe. And my mind was rolling through that, and one of the little acronyms that we always talk about in our workplace is S plus T equals B. S being stop, think, behave. And running through my mind through that session was actually we ought to swap the B and the T around and have stop, breathe, think. It's very, very powerful, isn't it? It really gives you a chance just to again reframe very, very quickly. So yeah.
And Kath, you can't be anything other than present when you go to your breath. So if you find yourself really stuck in the problems of the day, looking out in the future or thinking about what's happened in the past, going to your breath means you have to come into the present moment, and suddenly things can become different in perspective.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's that physiological and psychological thing mix up together, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Physical body sort of relaxing and sort of releasing something in your mind. Yeah, very, very interesting. Well, that's a really good segue because we have had some comments in our chat function, and Clive Wilson, he's put a few through the last few minutes, and he's basically saying, that the focus on breath precludes attention to other things and provides that space. So that's exactly what we were just saying, and that sense of peace. And Clive also had another big question, because we love big questions. And he was going back to the comment on metrics, and he was actually going to ask us, what do we think about the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a blueprint for humanity? Big question.
Well, I love the fact that they're there. I think it's really important to have them. I think there's a constant challenge in how you bring those 17 down to the practicalities of the day, and I'm sure that maybe that's what Clive is also trying to address with his book, because I think they're terribly important. So I'm fully supportive. I think we really believe in that as a way of looking at the future, and it's part of our challenge then is to translate that and help them become real and appropriate to what each of us is doing in our job and what our organizations are out to do in the world. But there's a lot of, if people don't know about the SDGs, there's a lot of information online, and they're really worth exploring and diving into.
Yeah, I mean, again, that I wasn't even aware of them, I have to say. So that just shows, doesn't it? So there is
exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a new set of DGs being developed alongside Clive. I don't know if you know about it, but the inner development goals. So this idea that there's the sustainable development goals, which is what we need to do externally in the world to try and build for a better world for all of us. And then the inner development goals, which is, well, actually, how do we show up to do that in the best way we can? Because if we bring our old patterns of behavior, we get in the way of the actual work we need to do. So there's a sort of nice inner outer play there as well.
Brilliant, thank you. We did have a few questions that were pre-submitted, and again, it'd be good to cover off a couple of those. We had a question from Denise, basically asking around maybe the first most practical step that a manager could take to improve their team's well-being. I just wanted to suggest, Simon, if you had a view on that.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to that one. I think creating the space for people to say and check in and just say how they really are, I think is hugely helpful. And it sounds very simple, but when I'm in rehearsal, we make time for a check-in at the beginning and end of each day. And of course, you're not always going to have time to do this in a business environment. But I'll just describe what we do in the rehearsal room, and perhaps there's something that's useful that people can take away. So we sit together as a whole team, and everybody is allowed to talk for up to 3 minutes, uninterrupted, about what's going on for them that day. And so one day somebody might just say, I feel fine. And one day they might want to say, I'm dealing with some stuff at home at the moment, and that's creating these feelings for me. And what's magical about it is the uninterruption. So you don't enter into a conversation. You don't react at all to what the person's saying. And that space holding that you do as a whole team is a really powerful thing. And the first time I'd ever encountered that outside the theatre world was when I started working with Sarsen, and there was a similar check-in at Sarsen. It's a really amazing thing. So I'd say just create time, even if it's just a couple of minutes altogether, to say, how's everyone doing? A sentence, a word even, can be really powerful. And just holding that space together, almost like a little tiny ritual, I think really, really helps people feel like they can be their whole selves, or the selves that matter at work. I don't know if you want to add anything, Simon, to that.
No, I think the value of being heard. I think when people feel heard, then we can begin to have a real conversation. I think the other thing, maybe there's one other thing, which is so often we end up in our lives, I know this with my children, this idea of connection, not correction. How do we connect to each other in order to hear what's really needed to be said? Because if we come from a place of correction, we often shut things down, and then it's very hard to actually build a common language, a common purpose, a well-being culture. So I think being heard and always remembering connection, not correction, as we go into an engagement with the other.
And we'll return to some of these tools in the listening session, which is session number 3. So if this is something that sounds interesting to you, do come back for that session, because there's some really exciting pearls of wisdom that we'll share then as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Simon. And again, very practical things that you can do both digitally and also in a room when you're together with people. So it doesn't really matter where you are. So really, really helpful stuff. Similar related question from Fallon. They're basically saying that they're a shift worker, so they have different routines each week. And they were just asking for any top tips on how you can set routines. So, how and when you can try and set yourself a good habit.
Yes, I get, which being a shift worker is tough because you can't just do it at the same time every day. Well, all I can say, Fallon, if it's helpful, is knowing that it's a priority is part of this. If we prioritize something, then we're more likely to find the space. So I imagine with your shift, it's still a similar period of time. And if the priority for you is that you want to create a practice, is it possible for you to do that practice at the same time at the beginning or end of each of your shifts, irrespective to when the time is? But you create a discipline of saying, okay, I've got 8 hours, I'm doing this. So the hour before, half an hour before that hour, I'm always going to do this. And you structure it like that, irrespective to what happens in the rest of your day. Because it feels like, at least I've noticed myself, I can easily create the excuse of saying, not today, the girls are crying, or I've got too much on. And as soon as I start doing that, everything falls away. But if I'm disciplined and say, this is my practice, and it's a priority because I know how much it helps me, it's amazing how I can then do it. And it becomes a virtuous circle.
Absolutely. And to build on that a little, I really understand, Fallon, because working in theatre, the hours are changing all the time. So it's not quite the same as shift work, but it's unpredictable. And I do exactly as Simon has just described. Whenever I'm making a start on a piece of work or coming into a show, I'll make about 15 minutes before to do a meditative exercise, but it's written. That really works for me, is writing it down. And I'll just make time for myself to write 3 pages of whatever is in my mind at that moment. And it is such a powerful tool for me. So a short and simple ritualistic practice that is associated with you starting work, I've found hugely helpful.
I think just again a sort of practical one for me is I'm terrible at timekeeping, so I use my mobile phone and I set alarms on it during the day for different things. So again, if it's sort of the little break time, the me time for 5 minutes, then I set a little alarm that then puts me into that. Right, okay, I've now got a period of time to do something. But yeah, it's hard, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough, but it's finding the ways and means to find those little short periods of time. It doesn't have to be long, and that's what I love about the breathing practice. It doesn't have to be long, does it?
Not at all.
Brilliant. Well, on the note of time, we've literally got a couple of minutes left, and we've still got quite a few questions. So I'm going to save them until session 4. And we'll come back to them. So sorry, everybody that has submitted a question and we haven't got to them. We will revisit on session 4. So please do rejoin us for that one on March the 3rd, I think it is. So in the next 2 weeks, Jess, again, just give us a quick reminder of what we might be experiencing in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. So next time we're going to work with Chris Connors, who's an amazing meditation teacher, master. And we're going to do a slightly longer practice with him. So it'll be a little bit like the videos we saw with Richie today, but a little bit longer practice. And there'll be time again. I'll invite you to reflect and examine how that felt and what came up. And then after that, we're going into a deep listening practice, which I personally have just found completely transformative. If you're interested in wellness, you might have experienced meditation before, but I think the deep listening is a really unusual practice and so applicable both in business and in the way that you relate to your family and your community. So really, really worth coming along to both of those.
Brilliant. And hopefully people can build this into their habits. So if you can get them in your diary for the next 3 weeks, and maybe you'll pick up some of those practices that work well for you, and then you can build them into everyday life. That would be great. Good outcome from these sessions. So we are literally in the last minute or so. So I just want to take a minute to say thank you very much both to Jess and Simon for spending their time with us today and connecting. It's been lovely to see people from all around the world in the comment box. So we've had literally people come together from everywhere. So we'll hope that you'll join us again next week, Thursday, 5 p.m. Put it into your diaries. Really just for me to wrap up really and say don't forget, if you remember the CMI, you can log into the Management Direct using the link in the live chat. So you'll see the link there. And there's a wide range of exclusive practical development resources and much more. And as a CMI member, you get access to various levels of services, including mental health support. If you're not a member or subscriber, you can join our community, and there's a link there too. And you can sign up to the free CMI newsletter for the latest trends, tips, and information for managers and leaders. Again, if you get the moment, if you could please fill in the feedback form, and then we'll build that into next week's session. And thank you very much for joining us, and just have a great rest of evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.